Hello and welcome to another video. I want to have a look at the British Airways long-haul fleet that's in service and talk about what the options are for the future. Welcome to London Heathrow to Terminal 5. Welcome to another video, a video with a difference. We're going to be talking about the British Airways long-haul fleet.
Welcome to Mark's British Airways Fleet Update, looking at short and long-haul fleets.
Hello and welcome to London's Heathrow Airport, Terminal 5, the home of British Airways. And behind me you can see British Airways aircraft at Terminal 5, particularly beyond where I am, the B gates and the C gates, where most of the long-haul flights leave, and the long-haul aircraft in the British Airways fleet, the Boeing 777s, 787s, Airbus A350s and Airbus A380s. Now that fleet the British Airways own has seen substantial change in recent times. Of course, the Boeing 747-400 fleet, which was on its way out, already had seen its demise accelerated, and all of those aircraft were withdrawn in the first half of 2020.
747 ready for departure.
Speedbird 747, thank you. Behind the departing company 747, line up runway 27 right behind.
Behind departing company 747, line up 27 right behind, Speedbird 747.
Runway 27 right, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 27 right, Speedbird 747.
Speedbird 747, clear for a low approach and go around, not below height 500 feet. After go around, climb straight ahead to altitude 6,000 feet.
Thanks so much for all your help guiding us over the years. It's been an absolute pleasure to fly the Queen of the Skies, and thank you for helping us commemorate her departure today. That's a final farewell from British Airways. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
That's left quite a significant hole in the British Airways long-haul fleet, but it has taken delivery of more Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft, particularly the Series 10, and its order for 18 Airbus A350-1000s have been delivered since the pandemic. It had one or two before, but the last of those aircraft, the 18th aircraft, arrived in the British Airways fleet and entered service in February 2024. So let's have a look at what some of those options might be right now. Hello and welcome from the Club World cabin in a club suite on British Airways 777 aircraft, 777-300. This is Golf Sierra Tango Bravo Papa, which happens to be the newest 777 in the British Airways fleet. It was delivered brand new 3 years ago during the pandemic, and it allowed them to withdraw one of the original 777 aircraft that didn't have the extended range that were registered in the GZZZA, B and C field. So anyway, this aircraft has plenty of life left in it and is going to be part of the British Airways fleet, I'm sure, for many years to come. But that's not the case for the rest of the 777 fleet. Now, British Airways has got some new aircraft on order. It's got some 787 Dreamliners, and it's extended the order to a larger number in the last year or so. So the 787-10s will arrive in greater number. Now, British Airways has said publicly in 2023 that it sees those 787s as growth aircraft. It's going to use those aircraft to add capacity to its long-haul fleet capacity, and I suspect as well, to be honest, some resilience, because there's been quite a few cancellations on British Airways in the last year or two because of some aircraft shortages. Now, British Airways has got on order some new 777X/9 aircraft, which will be the new, redesigned, reimagined Boeing 777s. But those are running late, and there appear to be challenges in Boeing in getting that aircraft certified and ready for service and then getting the aircraft to roll off the production line. I think some of those challenges are related to the issues they had with the 737 MAX and having to modify the aircraft and recertify it. So British Airways is probably not going to see any of those 777X aircraft until 2026. Just talk about the long-haul fleet and what the options potentially are for British Airways. And then I'm going to look into the future, look into the Marks, trains, planes and trams, crystal ball, and maybe speculate a little bit on what British Airways could do, and maybe talk about some options they're unlikely to pick up, but that might be quite fun. So let's have a look. So it's time to get into the detail and have a look at the British Airways long-haul fleet strategy and have a look at what those replacement options might be. So let's get on with it. Well, in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what went on before the pandemic in 2020, really to set the scene, to give you the context, talk about the recent fleet development, talk about the order book that British Airways have of aircraft due to arrive in their fleet on the long-haul side. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges of ordering Airbus aircraft, the challenges ordering Boeing aircraft, and how British Airways might trade that off. Talk about what the options ahead are from my perspective. This is all about my opinion, my interpretation of what's going on. I don't work for the airline, I don't work in the aviation industry, and I haven't got a huge amount of inside knowledge. So bear that in mind, but let's have a look at what might happen. But before we do that, let's just check in on the pre-pandemic position. What was the British Airways fleet like in March 2020? Well, if we rattle through the various types, the 777 fleet, a large fleet of 58 aircraft. There were 3 777-236s, the original version of the 777. They disappeared, and we'll see that shortly. 43 777-200s, 12 777-300s, 31 Boeing 747-400s, the queen of the skies, 12 Boeing 787-8s, 18 787-9s, 5 Airbus A350-1000s, and 12 Airbus A380s. So that gave them a fleet of 136 aircraft. But I wanted to just zoom in and talk a little bit about the withdrawal of the aircraft as the pandemic struck across the world in spring 2020, predominantly the 747 fleet, but that reference to a small number of 777s as well. So 31 747s were withdrawn. They had 2 layouts, one heavier with club class, both had 14 first class seats, one 86, the other 52 seats in club, and World Traveller Plus 30 and 36 World Traveller, which is the BA economy proposition, 145 versus 235. Quite a bit of difference you can see in those 2 different capacities. So one of those aircraft types often spent a lot of time on busy business routes, the New York route in particular, for those high club class capacity aircraft. The economy dominated aircraft tended to do more routes like Phoenix and Las Vegas, San Diego, with more leisure travel. Well, the plan as British Airways came round in 2020 was to have 25 aircraft at the end of that year, down to 20 the following year, then down to 12, but eventually to get to where we are today in 2024 and to have all of the 747s withdrawn. Now, my view on this is, I think if COVID hadn't have happened, maybe if the war in Ukraine hadn't have happened and we could still fly over Russian airspace, that a number of those 747s would still be here today, because British Airways would be faced with a scenario where the 777X was late. Those aircraft would not be being delivered as planned this year, and Rolls-Royce engine issues would I imagine still have happened, and that would have tested and challenged British Airways. I think maybe 14 of the 747s would have stayed, and BA may have been looking at how to refurbish, to inject a bit of life into those aircraft, possibly with club suites, to take them through until the arrival of the 777X. Now, at the same time that the 747s bit the dust, British Airways shortly after took 3 777-200s that didn't have the extended range capability that were delivered earlier than the others. Golf Zulu, 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 Alpha Bravo and Charlie. And the total capacity that was lost from these 34 aircraft was quite significant, actually. I've summarised it on that slide. Now, since the beginning of the pandemic, British Airways has taken delivery of 28 new long-haul aircraft, and a number of those aircraft were intended to allow departures from the 747 fleet, those 3 777s, but of course these aircraft were also intended to drive and support a bit of growth. So 13 Airbus A350s, which were very much ordered as 747 replacements, that completed the order of 18. No first class in those aircraft, and we'll see the significance of that in just a moment. 4 additional 777-300s. I suspect British Airways really wishes now that it had ordered more of either the 350 or the 777-300, possibly both, and 11 787-10s, actually the final one of that order of 12, which is Lima Lima, hopefully coming on stream very shortly. So 28 aircraft, giving 120 first class seats, 1,560 club suites, 1,273 World Traveller Plus, and 5,190 economy class seats. And when we look at this table that I'm putting up on the screen now, in the first row is the capacity of the aircraft that were withdrawn, predominantly those 747s withdrawn around March 2020. And then in the line below, the capacity that I've just rattled off from that slide of the new aircraft that have been delivered since the pandemic. And what's quite interesting with this is that British Airways has only restored 24.7% of the first class capacity that was lost from those aircraft disappearing. All 34 of those aircraft had 14 first class seats, so they were quite heavy with first class capacity. And of course, the Airbus A350 that is responsible for quite a few of the new aircraft that have arrived has no first class at all, and the new Dreamliners and the 777s have been delivered with only 8 first class seats. At Club World, slightly higher, 66.8% of capacity restored, and of course generally club suites replacing old club class seating, so that's a positive step forward. World Traveller Plus, the BA Premium economy product, quite an interesting scenario here, because what's happened is BA has ordered newer aircraft with a significantly bigger premium economy cabin, a World Traveller Plus cabin. So they've actually put in 117.2% of the World Traveller Plus capacity that existed before. And World Traveller, the economy class product on British Airways, offering 84.6 of the pre-pandemic levels. So looking at total seating capacity across the fleet, 78% of the capacity of those withdrawn aircraft has been replicated with the new deliveries. But you can see BA is still short of capacity overall. So that sets the scene, but let's just have a look at the long-haul fleet in a bit more detail and where it is. And what I've done here is I've listed each of the subtypes of aircraft. And the 777 fleet, quite complex. There's 5 different aircraft types there that I've summarised. I'll talk about those in a moment. 3 types of Dreamliner 787, although there's 4 lines here because I've divided the 787-8s into those that I think will have club suites by January and those that won't. 787-9s, 787-10s, the Airbus A350-1000 and the A380, so 131 aircraft. And what you can see from this table, where I've summarised the age of that batch of aircraft, clearly the aircraft that are approaching retirement, the aircraft that are the oldest in the fleet, are the British Airways 777-200s. And you can see that age varies from 15 years up to about 28 years. And that's significantly older than anything else that BA is currently operating. And what that means, of course, is it's these aircraft that really come under scrutiny as we look to contemplate how British Airways is going to renew the fleet and what the options are. But let's have a look at what's already on the way for British Airways in the way of long-haul aircraft orders that are due for delivery. It's quite simple. There's two orders that British Airways are hoping to see. There's an order for 6 Dreamliners, 6 Boeing 787-10s. Unusually, or perhaps differently, those aircraft are coming from Boeing with General Electric engines. Now, British Airways has been a loyal customer of Rolls-Royce. It hasn't always ordered Rolls-Royce engines for its long-haul fleet. A number of the 777s have recently arrived with General Electric engines, but the decision has been taken because of reliability and availability issues, and I suspect very significantly cost issues. General Electric have won an order for the first time with British Airways for the Dreamliner. So that's quite interesting. And one more aircraft with Rolls-Royce 1000 engines, Trent 1000s, to arrive. And then we'll see those 6 GE-powered 787-10s. The 787-10 is an aircraft that has obviously greater capacity than the other Dreamliners, but it does have limitations around its range. We'll talk about that in a moment. And the 777X Series 9, 18 of those aircraft should have been with us already. They've been delayed. I think we're now expecting 2027 is probably the earliest we'll see those. Again, General Electric power plants on those aircraft. Both the aircraft types are coming in a 4-class configuration with 8 first-class seats, respectable numbers of club suites, and also World Traveller Plus, but also a significant boost to the economy capability in both respects. Now, one of the things that it's worth noting, and this is quite important, so if you're interested in this subject, I'd pay attention to this. British Airways have said publicly in their statements to the capital markets that the 787-10s are intended for capacity and resilience. Now, British Airways can always change its strategy, they can always change their mind and decide to do things differently, and they have done that in the past. But as things stand at present, we're expecting those 787-10s to add capacity and resilience to the network, not to support the withdrawal of the older Boeing 777-200ER aircraft. And what do I mean by capacity and resilience? Well, British Airways have got aspirations to launch new routes. They're keen to expand the North American market. They have suspended some routes elsewhere, routes like Kuwait, for example, and Bahrain are being suspended from early 2025. Now, whether British Airways will want to go back to those routes remains to be seen, but they've certainly got other routes that they want to put aircraft on, new routes and routes like Las Vegas where there'll be frequency enhancements. So that's really what we'll expect to see the 787-10s doing. The 777X/9s were originally ordered to form part of the renewal strategy for the 747-400 fleet. But events obviously overtook the airline, particularly the pandemic, and those aircraft have disappeared in any case. So now the intention is that those aircraft will replace a significant part of the Heathrow 777-236ER fleet. Now that's going to give a substantial boost in capacity, but that's worth bearing in mind as we look at the British Airways options. So let's have a more detailed look at that 777-200ER fleet. So there's 18 aircraft at London Heathrow in a 4-class configuration with General Electric engines, a moderately rated engine and a slightly higher powered engine, with aircraft in both categories operating out of Heathrow, and First Club, World Traveller Plus and World Traveller. Those 18 neatly form a number that's identical to the 18 777Xs that are on their way. So we can expect to see a like for like replacement there, one in, one out, at the point that the 777X is ready to come off the production line. And we are probably some way away from that. Now, there's 4 3-class 777-236ERs based at Heathrow that are slightly younger than the rest of their sister aircraft. They were ordered as a slightly later batch. They arrived from 2009, and because they're almost 10 years younger than the other aircraft, that means they've got a lot of life left in them. They've got Rolls-Royce Trent 895 engines. My guess is they'll be around till 2035. There's 9 777-236s 3-class that are older with Rolls-Royce engines, and then there's 12 aircraft at Gatwick, 6 with the Rolls-Royce engines, 6 with the GE engines, almost identical interiors. They do vary by 4 World Traveller Plus seats. So we work our way through that list, we get our calculator out, we play around with it. What does that mean? I think the BA accountants are unlikely to write off those 4 newer 777-200ERs, and they can survive slightly inconvenient to the operations team at British Airways, but they can survive and they can fly in a small fleet alongside the 16 777-300s and the 777Xs. The 777-300ERs have got a lot of life left in them, and there'll be an order, of course, for those 777Xs being delivered. So the net requirement, after all that's considered and said and done, is 21 aircraft plus any more the BA might want for growth. Now, as British Airways decides how to replace those 21 aircraft, it's important to emphasise this is all about financial analysis. They'll be looking for which option brings the best results for British Airways over the asset life, the best results financially, and virtually everything that you might think of can be built into the financial analysis with direct or indirect assessment of costs and revenue. And British Airways will be making judgments on things like delivery risk, on customers' propensity to travel in one type of aircraft versus another, ongoing costs around maintenance, and what impact things like pilot training will have on the costs. Because if you're going to convert, say, a large number of 777 pilots to Airbus aircraft, that might seem very attractive on the one hand, but it's quite a lot of work and quite a lot of time for those pilots, quite a lot of time they won't be flying planes productively. So my view is that British Airways has got options to look at second-hand aircraft. We'll talk about those in a moment. And it's got options to buy new aircraft, and potentially any of the aircraft on the market from Airbus or Boeing are options. I don't think at this stage that anybody is able to offer a long-haul aircraft to British Airways who's not Airbus or Boeing, but we'll talk about that now. So let's look at the second-hand aircraft. Well, the most cited option for second-hand aircraft is the Airbus A380. British Airways have 12 of those. They all have Rolls-Royce Trent 970 engines, and they are unlikely to want to bring in an A380 with a different set of engines on such a small fleet. So there are 6 Malaysian, 6 Thai airlines aircraft still available, but they've been in store now for nearly 5 years. Now, British Airways had real challenges and continues to this day to have real challenges with their A380s from the impact of storing them through the pandemic. And I suspect that aircraft that have been stored for longer, for 5 years, would have even more challenges. So bear that in mind. Second-hand aircraft, well, there are a few Airbus A330 aircraft floating around. They're in various configurations, but they're over 20 years old if they're on the market, not in great shape. And 777-200 and 300 aircraft have been withdrawn. For example, Japan Airlines were withdrawing their 777-300s, but they're aircraft that have lived a substantial life already. And when you look at these options, I think the costs of converting the Airbus A380 are very substantial. Putting the new BA layout into them, rehabilitating them, addressing damp and humidity and dry surroundings that will all have contributed to the aircraft potentially not being in a great shape for probably a limited life going forward. Is it worth it? And quite frankly, the second-hand aircraft market is almost non-existent around the long-haul fleet, because many of the world's big international airlines are facing exactly the same challenge British Airways is facing. They've got aircraft that they've ordered from Boeing in particular, but also Airbus, that haven't been delivered on time. They haven't been delivered on schedule. Business has bounced back from the pandemic quicker and better than many people expected, and they need aircraft to service that. So yes, there are aircraft lying around in various places like Victorville, but most of them are really old. They are aircraft that are expensive to run, they're expensive to maintain. There would be a very considerable cost to returning those aircraft to traffic. So I don't think there's any fundamental belief in British Airways that they would never bring in second-hand aircraft, although their track record is they haven't done it very often for long-haul aircraft. But I don't think this is a realistic option, and I think it will be ruled out by BA. So the new aircraft options, well, what I've done is I've divided these options between how they'd look for Heathrow and how they'd look for Gatwick. And I've thought about all the different aircraft that are on the market from Airbus and from Boeing, and I've had a look through what they offer. And I've summarised there the seating capacity of aircraft. Now, you might say, well, how do you know what the seating capacity would be? And the answer is, I don't. But I've taken a best guess. I've used existing BA configurations. I've looked at airlines like Iberia, Virgin Atlantic, Cathay Pacific, and taken a Marks, Trains and Planes estimate as to what that might look like. Now, I know that ultimately British Airways is all about making money. It's about maximising its yield, and potentially cutting capacity could help them to offer better yield and to make more money. But I think British Airways would be reluctant to sacrifice capacity. It has quite a lot of fixed costs as an airline, and if it substantially reduces its capacity, it's going to struggle to meet those fixed costs. Slots at Heathrow are at a premium and they're expensive. So while one can look at options like the Airbus A321, it's a massive reduction in capacity. The A330-900 Neo and the A350-900 are also reductions in capacity as well, as is the Dreamliner in the two shorter variants, the 8 and the 9. So that leaves some other options, and the Gatwick scenario. Now, I've had a look here at the different options that I think British Airways might be considering. Of course, it's a choice between an Airbus product and a Boeing product, but in simple terms, I think British Airways is unlikely to want to add complexity to its long-haul fleet by bringing in new types like the A330-900 Neo, although potentially they could use their pilots from the A350 fleet to operate that aircraft. But actually, British Airways has ended up with quite a complex matrix of long-haul aircraft, and you could see that by looking at the complexity of some of those tables that I was showing you earlier in this presentation. The Boeing Dreamliner, probably the Dreamliner-10, is a candidate. It has good cargo capability. It's a bit of a challenge in terms of its range. It can't operate all of the routes that BA would like to operate from Heathrow, although it can operate the vast majority, and I think the range issue on the 787-10 gets over-egged for BA, because BA's flights on the whole are not ultra long range, and that is not a problem. The cargo capacity is very welcome. The key competition here is the Airbus A350. Now, there is an issue around engines, because as we've already discussed, the Dreamliner has a choice between Rolls-Royce and GE engines. That's a choice that British Airways would want to think long and hard about and evaluate carefully. At the moment, the Airbus A350 only comes with Rolls-Royce engines, whether it's the 900 or the 1000. Now, BA's already got some A350 1000s, and it's a bit of a challenge to fit 10 abreast economy class seating on an A350. Now, it is just about possible. A couple of the charter airlines, one of the French charter airlines, has done that, but it's a squeeze. And I think even British Airways is going to struggle to persuade its passengers that a 10 abreast seating layout in an A350 is comfortable and that it's worth buying a ticket to fly in that. And I think British Airways would resist the temptation put forward by its accountants to move in that direction. But of course, if you only have 9 abreast, it does make it more challenging to match the capacity of the 777 that currently flies with 10 abreast. So you need to bear that in mind. So I've put a few other points there. You can have a look at that slide. But let's cross out those options that I think are going to result in a material reduction in capacity or are going to be more difficult operationally, like the A330-900 Neo. So for the Gatwick fleet, that leaves us with the choice of the 2 A350 variants from Airbus and the Dreamliner stroke 10. And at Heathrow, possibly you could say we could live with the A330-900 Neo because they might be able to accommodate that at Heathrow, the 2 A350 models and the Dreamliner stroke 10. Now, my solution, I think it's a pragmatic solution, but of course, viewer, I'm not going to say anything else, am I? Because I'm here to talk about my solution. It avoids new aircraft types for BA. It supports their fleet simplification. It retains that differential high leisure based product mix at London Gatwick. It supports pilot training, which is a big cost for British Airways. I think they could deliver my scenario with no additional training on top of the training that would be happening routinely anyway as pilots transition to long haul. I think my strategy provides for modest capacity growth, and I think I've put a strategy forward that also avoids British Airways being dominated by risk from any one of Boeing or Airbus or Rolls-Royce. So what is the plan? Well, the plan from my perspective at Marks Trains, Planes and Trams is for BA to order 6 additional Dreamliners, the Boeing 787 Series 10, order them with GE engines, configure them as per the other Heathrow Dreamliners, operate them from Heathrow, and then to order or to pick up an option that they've already got for 18 Airbus A350 1000s. They would come with the Rolls-Royce Trent XWB engine, and although it's a Rolls-Royce engine, it's a Rolls-Royce engine that hasn't given huge problems. There was a check recently following an incident at Cathay Pacific, but BA is maintaining good levels of availability with its A350 fleet. Now, 3 of those would be configured as the existing Heathrow fleet with 56 Club, no first class, 56 World Traveller Plus, 219 economy. Possibly BA may want to take the opportunity to address some of those issues it faces with the galley configuration on either the new aircraft or both the new and the existing fleet. That might result in the loss of a very small single figure number of seats, but that'll be up to them. And then 12 aircraft for Gatwick to replace the 12 777s. They'd have slightly less Club. I think the same World Traveller Plus, BA's margin on World Traveller Plus is the highest of any of its 4 classes. So let's guess and say 42 Club, 56 World Traveller Plus. That would give space for 271 economy class seats. And I think at a time that a number of the long-haul charter carriers have disappeared, it means that BA can put capacity on those leisure routes from Gatwick that I think it would sell. It would be extra margin, extra profit, and I think it would support British Airways in their drive for better profitability. Now, I think 18 would be the right number of aircraft to order, so that gives them 3 aircraft for growth, 3 aircraft that they could choose as they get closer to delivery, whether to configure in the Heathrow or the Gatwick configuration. If they went for more than 12 aircraft at Gatwick, they could launch additional routes, maybe to American destinations, possibly go back to Oakland or San Jose, possibly go to Florida more often, maybe additional Caribbean routes, and so on. So if we go back to this table, but just revisit it to look at the replacement status, 18 777-200s replaced by 18 777Xs, retain the 4 younger aircraft, 9 777-200s in the 3-class configuration with the Rolls-Royce engines would get replaced with 6 Dreamliners and 3 A350s, and then 12 Airbus A350s to Gatwick to replace the 12 aircraft that form those 2 fleets of 6. So that is the strategy that I'm outlining. What does that mean in terms of capacity? Well, those 777-200ERs that would be scrapped have a total capacity of 10,686 seats, and they'd be replaced by a fleet of aircraft that would bring in 12,807 seats. Across the first class cabins, there'd be a 33% increase in capacity, 25 in club class, 12 in World Traveller Plus, and 20% increase in economy and World Traveller. Overall, that's a 20% increase in capacity for BA. And what would the fleet look like? Well, having had 136 aircraft back in March 2020, this would bring them to a total number of 134 aircraft. Clearly they could order more if they wanted, but with the war in Ukraine ongoing and the challenge that BA faces in operating some of its Asian routes cost effectively and competing with Chinese airlines that are quite happy to fly across Russia, maybe at the moment that's a sensible number. And that brings us to the end of my thoughts on the British Airways long-haul fleet strategy. This is purely speculation. There's a bit of research there to present you with some facts about what's happening now, what BA have committed to. But beyond that, it's speculation and maybe just a little bit of fun. But I hope you found that of interest as we've worked our way through the British Airways long-haul fleet strategy. If you've enjoyed this video, do press the like button, do subscribe to the channel, press for notifications, and I'll be back with another video about the aviation world, whether it's an update on the fleet in an airline or maybe a trip report. I'll be back real soon. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss any of the great trips Mark has coming your way on this YouTube channel.